Is right here, and I know you all been anxiously awaiting another physics video. So we're going to do the quadratic equation, and you know I started writing this. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and this entire thing all over 2a. Now hopefully some of you have remembered this. Now some of you may actually be able to recite it but have no idea what it's for. So let's talk about that. Well, when do I use this crazy quadratic equation? Well, I use it when I have this form. When I have x squared, something times x squared, plus something times x to the first power, plus or minus something times x to the 0 power, and that whole thing equal to 0. Now, I don't see any a's, b's, or c's. Well, that's because I haven't put them in yet, and that's where this comes in. They're the little coefficients that go in front of these terms. So A, B, and C. Now, hopefully you remember from your math class that anything to the 0 power is 1, and anything to the first power is itself, and then of course x squared. So let's just rewrite this in a form that looks a little bit more familiar, because maybe up to this point you were thinking, what the heck is she doing? But so then we get this form. All right, and now how do these two connect exactly? Well, in order to solve this equation, in other words, in order to figure out what values of x will make this side of the equation equal 0, I can use the quadratic equation. I can literally just take whatever these exponents happen to be and plug them in according to this, and out will pop the answer. Okay, and so we oftentimes get in a physics equation in this format, and we want to know what value of x makes this thing go to 0. All right, so let's try an example. All right, so let's do this. Let's clear the screen. And let's write down the next example. So sometimes you may have something that looks like this. A positive 3x squared plus a 2x minus 5x squared plus 4x minus 6 equals a minus 18. What the heck am I doing? You do notice that that has nothing to do with the format that I just wrote down. So we need to simplify this. We have to get it in the proper format, because if we don't, we cannot use our handy dandy quadratic equation. So let's simplify. So I've got a positive 3x squared and a negative 5x squared, which turns out to be a minus 2x squared. And let's change pen colors again. And we have a positive 2x and a positive 4x, which gives us a positive 6x. And then last but not least, let's use pink. We have a minus 6 on this side and a minus 18 on this side. Now remember, I have to have this side equal to 0, which means that this thing has to come over here. So in order to do that, I need to add 18 to both sides. So when I do that, I got plus 18 and a minus 6 gives me a positive 12. And this whole thing is equal to 0. Now we are ready to use our quadratic equation. Let's just highlight that now we have our coefficients. This is A, this is B, and this is C. And so we can just literally plug into our quadratic. So remember, it's negative b, so that's going to be a negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which would be 6 squared, minus 4. A is a minus 2, so I have to take into account that negative sign. Don't forget that. And then for AC, what is C? Positive 12. So we put that in parentheses here. All right, and then this whole thing divided by 2 times A. And don't forget your minus 2 for your A. Okay? All right, let's simplify. Now, one thing I want to point out, though, before we simplify, do you notice that I have a minus 4 times a minus 2? What happens when you multiply two negatives? You get a positive. Don't forget that. Signs are a problem with the quadratic equation. So, let's simplify. We get minus 6 plus or minus, and beneath the radical we have 36 plus 96. And this whole thing all divided by minus 4. So if you go ahead and figure out what 36 plus 96 and then the square root of that is, you're going to get this, minus 6 plus or minus this 11.49. Okay, and if you don't believe me, you can check it out yourself. Give it a try on your calculator. All right, now the next thing we have to do, though, you notice we have two situations. We have a plus situation and a minus situation. So we literally have to take minus 6 plus 11.49 and minus 6 minus 11.49 and then divide each one of those by minus 4. So let's take the plus side first. All right, and I'm going to change pen colors yet again. And when I do the plus side, I'm going to get 5.49 divided by a minus 4. Or when I do the minus side, okay, I get a minus 6 and a minus 11.49. I get a minus 17.49 divided by a minus 4. So simplifying to get two numbers, whoops, that shouldn't be or, it should be an equal, sorry. So I get a positive 5.49 divided by a negative 4, which gives me a negative 1.37. Or I have a negative 17.49 divided by a negative 4, and you know that two negatives, right? Two negatives give you a positive, and I'm going to get a positive 4.37. Those are the two answers to our equation. Either one of those will make that whole thing equal 0. Now, depending on what we're doing in physics, one or both of these may be correct. I'll give you an example when one won't be correct. If we were trying to find out when trying to solve for time, you all know that you cannot have negative time. Time does not go backwards. So in that case, if we were solving for time, we would know that this was not a valid answer, and only this one was valid. But it depends on what we happen to be trying to solve when we use the quadratic. But we must evaluate our answers. But that's how you use the quadratic equation.